Welcome to Three Cops Talk. On this podcast, three active duty police officers discuss behind-the-scenes stories and real-life accounts of what it's like to be a cop. Every episode, you'll get an inside look at the challenges and dangers they face on a daily basis, as well as the triumphs and inspirational moments that make it all worth it. If you want to understand more about the men and women who put their lives on the line for us every day, then this is the show for you. And now your hosts, Chris, Scott, and Shaun.
We've gone to the north of us, Canada. Canada is a great place. We talked about this a lot. Policing in the United States is influenced a great deal by Canadian trainers. Like some of the best trainers I've ever experienced were, from Canadian police departments. But let's get into our guest today as a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer who was shot on duty in 1998 in British Columbia while she was attempting to execute a warrant on a suspected sex offender. Her injuries were so severe that her lower leg had to be amputated. And due to that harrowing experience, she subsequently was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. The good side of that is only 10 months later, after her amputation, she made a successful and unprecedented return to full unrestricted policing duties, which for anybody is amazing. Her shooting was a high-profile event in Canadian media, and she's been honored with several awards, including the prestigious Governor General's Meritorious Service Medal, as well as the Medal of Valor from the International Association of Women Police. She retired in January 2020, and last year she wrote a memoir about the incident and her experience called 1033, An Officer Down, Step Back Up. So, folks, please take the time here to welcome our guest, retired Sergeant of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, Laurie White. Laurie, thanks for being here. We appreciate you taking some time out for us.
Thank you for having me.
From your time to talk about this. So let's start with where you want to start. Your journey of becoming a member of a police force that's so well known in the world, like the red tunics and the riding pants and the cool boots. It's like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I want to be that. And you're like, oh, darn, they're in Canada. I'm not allowed to be that. So I've got to do something as close to that as possible. And I had to join the military. So it was kind of cool. So tell us a little bit about your journey, what it was like, how you were born and raised, like how you came to that.
So thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys. I grew up about an hour outside of Ottawa in a smaller town, and I really had never given policing any consideration. It was not on my radar. I did 2 university degrees thinking that I was going to be a phys ed teacher. And when I was doing a substitute teaching class of grade 9, mostly boys, 23 boys and 3 girls, I was 21 and I was substitute teaching. And it was a very long, painful 75-minute class. And finally, the bell rang. I had no material or anything like that. It's just babysitting. The bell finally rang, and I went to turn off the light and close the classroom door. And one of the grade 9 boys slapped me on the ass, and he ran off down the hall.
For real?
So I chased him because you can't do that.
No.
So I chased him and I caught him and I grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and I kind of chucked him up against the lockers. And then I decided, you know what? Maybe teaching's not for me.
And maybe slapping women on the ass isn't for him. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Good for you.
Anyway, it was actually right in that timing. That was not the reason that I decided to change and become a police officer, but that's definitely when I decided that teaching was not really in my future. So I promptly finished my master's degree instead of doing my teaching certificate and degree. And I moved back in with my parents. So there I was at 23 with 2 degrees and no job really that was anything permanent. And I definitely did not want to be sitting in my parents' basement. So I kept myself really busy. I was substitute teaching. I was a fitness instructor. I was a skating coach, and I was a bartender, and a very good one at that. And I, while I was teaching at the YMCA in my hometown, I met a local police officer, and I grew up in a town where it's on the border. So you can see the United States from our town. And so in that smaller town, we had our own city force. And then Ontario has its own provincial police force. And the person I met was RCMP. And so I was intrigued by what he did because you didn't really see them very often. There weren't very many that were posted in my hometown. And so they did more border customs kind of type job, federal drug type files and things. Right. And so so I was intrigued by that. And so he said to me, Laurie, you're outgoing, you're fit, like maybe you should give that some thought. And he planted the seed and I pursued it. And that's exactly what I did. And I applied, I think it was January of 1995. And I was at training in Saskatchewan by August. On November 27th of 1998, I was doing a search warrant and it was on a suspected sex offender. I had a file on him previously to do with sexual interference. And so he had already been to court on that back in September. So a couple months prior to this incident. And so I think that previous file really, because it's a small town and word travels fast. And so that victim had come forward. And so her disclosure had sort of generated a bit of a snowball impact, how it does. Some of her friends and other people that she knew came forward too. And so I ended up with multiple victims. And so by the time November came around, I had some more evidence and some more information in order to be able to go and do this search warrant. So we were there on a nice brisk, November afternoon. And he lived in a townhouse complex where there were probably 10 units in a row. And he wasn't on the end, maybe seventh down. And it's a carport. And I was standing to the right. And my corporal, who was my supervisor, my direct supervisor, was to the left of the door. And then we had our third partner around the back. And this person had no history of violence, nothing like that. We're just standing there and all of a sudden I heard a giant pop and it was like a balloon popped right beside my ear. And so that reverberation feeling, that vibrating, that buzzing in my noise was just instant. And I had a hard time deciphering what was real. And I was standing there and I have this pop and I see this black hole in the white door. And then I taste the gritty residue from gunpowder and I smell the gunpowder and it's just kind of in my face. And I look down and I see this smoke coming from my right shin and it's this grayish, blackish, whitish smoke. And then I realized now it's weird how my senses all kicked in before my brain actually realized I've been shot. So I said to my partner, I've been shot. And he said, what? And I said, I've been shot. And he said, well, lie down. So I did. I lay down on my left side and I heard it. Well, he quickly looked and told me that I had one bullet hole in my leg and he grabbed me by the back of my gun belt and by the back of my collar. And he dragged me around a vehicle that was there to kind of protect me from the line of fire. And I heard him say over the radio, it's a 1033, which here in Canada is the worst code you can hear from a dispatch. Is 1033 means officer down. It means it's an emergency. It's urgent. Everyone drop what they're doing. You got to go. And that's what I heard, which is what led me to the title of my book. And so they made arrangements for me to go to the Kitimat Hospital, of course, community of 10,000, not a big hospital. So they made arrangements for me to be medevaced to Vancouver. And so I was conscious for about 4 hours. And I remember in that time frame really willing my eyes to stay open because I was losing blood at an alarming rate. The pain was excruciating. There was a lot of chaos around me. They were cutting my clothes off. There was just a lot happening. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, there's one thing I can control and it's my eyes. And if I can keep my eyes open, then I can prove to myself that I'm still alive. And so I remember at one point being in the Kitimat Hospital before they decided to, or before arrangements were made for me to medevac. And somebody came in and said, Laurie, do you have any dying declarations? And I thought, holy shit, what the hell is a dying declaration? Like, I don't even know. And I remember patting my torso and thinking, like, was I shot somewhere else? Like, did I get shot again that I'm not aware of it? And no one's been kind of truthful with me. So that was very troubling. So I was, conscious for about 4 hours and I woke up in the Vancouver hospital several hours later after I think the surgery was about 8 hours. And I awoke to the news that my lower right leg had been amputated. It's just that I think back then we weren't talking about mental health nearly to the same degree that we are in 2022. And so I had a visit from a psychiatrist when I was in the hospital, just kind of after they did a critical incident stressing debriefing among the other people. I wasn't really part of that. But, they did all the things that you're supposed to do. They brought somebody to me and he kind of did an interview and said, I think you're kind of as good as you can be given your circumstances right now. And so here's my card and call if you need. But because I think I was an athlete, I started focusing on the injury itself. So it's more about the stuff that you can control. And so I really was focused on getting as much mobility and as much activity level back as I possibly could. So the emotional side of it really kind of took a back seat, except that if you don't pay attention to your brain, it comes back to bite you in the ass. And that's exactly what happened. I had the first few weeks, it was more about wound care and I was kind of playing hostess a little bit in the hospital. I mean, my situation was very high profile. I had lots of visitors, lots of media interest and all that. Well, once I got released from the hospital and once I started to live in this furnished condo that was not my home in a strange city, my mom had left her job to come and be my full-time caregiver. And that's when the heaviness and the darkness really set in. That's when you don't have any control over that part. That just set right in. And I really struggled. When I actually chose to go back to work, I chose to go back there. And my family was kind of like, well, what? Why would you go back to the very community and that this all happened in? But because I had so much support within the community itself with my colleagues, and because I knew my way around, I wanted to reduce all those external stressors. Like I didn't want to have to learn new office procedures, because every time you go to a new office, obviously there's new ways of doing things, there's new bosses, new dynamics. And I thought, if I'm going to have success in returning to work, I need to take away as many of those things that I can take away. And so that's why I chose to go back there, because I thought, at least if I fail, I'll fail surrounded by people who actually care about me.
Yeah.
I had already proven myself to many people, but I needed to prove myself to myself now.
Yeah.
So in order to go back to work, I was told by the RCMP that I had to do the PARE test, and it's the PARE test, PARE, the physical abilities something or another test. And it's a test that we have to do in order to A, get accepted, and then B, graduate from our training program. And it's a time test, an obstacle course test, where it simulates a foot chase and then kind of a struggle with a bad guy. And so that was the epitome of the physical training testing. That was the certification that you had to get in order to go back to work. And I was pissed off back then because I didn't understand why I had to do that test. Nobody else had ever had to do that test. And honestly, to my knowledge now, 25 years later, no one still has. So that really frustrated me at the time, because I thought, why are the rules different for me? Like, I've seen people go off, have babies, have heart surgery, have knee issues and surgeries and stuff. And like, why is it that the rules are different for me? And so I was very angry about that, because I felt like they were wanting me to fail.
Right.
And I was very defensive and I was very angry about the whole situation. Having said that, that was what was out there. That's what they told me that I had to do. And so that's what I had to do. If I was going to regain any of my work world, and certainly if I was going to be able to resume my normal activities and my athletic, endeavors in that, then that was a good way to practice for that also. So I did it, but I was angry because I didn't feel like it was fair. And so the world is not a just place. I'm well aware of that now, but at the time it felt like another slap in the face. And so what I did was I worked my ass off and I finally passed that test. And then all of a sudden they were saying, oh, I think they thought that I would not be able to do it.
Yeah. Right.
So it was very quiet for a while. And I was just grinding. Right. And then all of a sudden I surface and I can do the test and they're like, holy shit. Now what do we do with her? So all of a sudden there's these new hoops. There's new,
you have to lift an elephant over your head.
Exactly. And that's what I felt like.
Right.
So I had to do driving and I had to do our use of force computer simulations and I had to do shooting and I had to go see a psychologist, like all these new hoops. So I was very, very frustrated because I felt like now they had said for all those months, do the PARE. You have to do the PARE. You got to do the PARE. Once I did the PARE, oh yeah, and by the way, all these other things, you got to do those now too. So I felt like there were delays. Right. Yeah. And so when I retired, I finally had some time and some distance and some separation from that career and some of the conflict that I had had. And then I was able to go back and look at what I wrote and thought, okay, I can just, with some tweaks here, it actually has a really good message. So I reached out to an editor with what I had at the time. And I said, I want you to be 100% honest with me. I know I don't know you, but you're a professional in this area. And if this is something that I should just bind up and leave for my kids to read one day, just so they know their mom a little bit better, then you tell me, and I will put this to bed, and that'll be the end of it. And he came back and said, no, I think there's definitely something here. It's a good message here. And so let's work on it. And that's what we did.
And that is a great spot.
I think the tone really needed to be.
Yeah, like that's a great spot to kind of wrap this in at the end here. Like, where can people find information on you, about you, with the book, everything is that? Go ahead and do the plug for that if you can.
Sure. So Google search will tell you a lot, because I have been high profile over the years. And so under my name and Laurie White, RCMP, you'll see a lot. I've got my book at Amazon. I'm thinking in the States, Barnes and Noble, it's there. It's pretty much available anywhere, and it's called 1033, an officer down steps back up. See that little play on words that I did there?
It was awesome. That is great.
Nice.
Very catchy. I like it. I like it. 1033. It's a different 10 code for us. I don't even know if we use 1033 in the United States. And officer needs assistance is one that obviously raises everybody's, basically awareness of what's going on. We've had to do that, unfortunately, a lot in the United States as of late to say that. But this is a great story, Laurie. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us about it. And we'd like to, anything have you, related to Canadian policing. It'd be great to have somebody that's on that end that can come back and be an expert for us on it. I mean, I'm not trying to put you in that kind of light. Like, you're a very humble person. It's just kind of nice to see, like, somebody that's gone through what you can, has taken some of the things that, while you were talking with me, I was like, yeah, I felt that, like, anger about things throughout my career. And did I necessarily put it to good use like you did? And I think a lot of us in this work can listen to this and say, well, cool. At the end of the day, I still had everything intact on my body, and my mind was still there, maybe with it. You had to fight all those battles and then some. So again, I can't say enough good things about you. One, for just doing that and then presenting this to us, and hopefully we can help you present this message out to more people on there.
Ever wanted to ask a police officer a question? Mail your questions to 3copstalk@gmail.com. That's the number 3, copstalk@gmail.com, and we'll answer them on the show. Follow us on Instagram at 3copstalk. That's the number 3, copstalk. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.
And Constable White, dispatched to a bear patrol.